Is this really the Kirk Hammett Greeny? Let's walk our way over to the bench and talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of On the Bench here at Cream City. I'm Jacob, and today we are looking at a Gibson Les Paul. This is Greeny, or at least this is the USA production standard version of Greeny. This is probably the most storied guitar out of all the Les Pauls that came out of the late 50s. This guitar has been through a couple really big name hands and has been on some pretty big records. So this guitar's story begins in the mid-1960s when Peter Green of Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac purchased this guitar. This guitar became synonymous with Peter Green because in the middle position, the pickups were out of phase. Some people say it's because his guitar tech flipped the neck pickup around, but that wouldn't change the polarity of the magnets. Other people say it was a Gibson factory error. No one is totally sure what happened exactly, but the magnet in this pickup is flipped. So Peter Green uses this guitar throughout his career with Fleetwood Mac and holds on to the guitar for a little while after being removed from the band. That's when Gary Moore enters the picture. Gary Moore buys this guitar off Peter Green for the same price that Peter Green had originally purchased this guitar, which is a reported 110 British pounds. Peter said he didn't want a single cent more than what he had paid for it. And Gary said, well, if you ever want the guitar back, you can have it back, to which Peter Green has reportedly responded that he never wanted to see this guitar again. Gary Moore uses this guitar throughout the remainder of his time in Thin Lizzy, his time with Phil Lynott during Phil Lynott's solo career, and then into his own solo career. Now, at some point, Gary Moore sells this guitar off, and it goes to the hands of a bunch of different collectors. But in 2014, this guitar gets bought by none other than Mr. Kirk Hammett of Metallica. Kirk had this guitar for a couple years. Gibson made him a near identical replica of that guitar for him to use live after using the original one live a number of times, which then prompted Gibson to do a run of 50 of these guitars that were as close to being exact clones of the original Greeny as humanly possible. They sold for a whopping $50,000 and included dinner with Kirk Hammett himself. Hardware-wise is where things get a little bit strange. You're gonna note that it's got 2 reflector knobs for the bridge controls and 2 regular old top hat knobs for the neck controls. That is something that Gary Moore did. The neck is just your standard 59 neck carve, rosewood fingerboard, trapezoid inlays. They've removed the Les Paul standard silk screen from the headstock. That's because the actual Greeny is so worn out that it doesn't exist on that guitar anymore. Otherwise, regular old Gibson headstock, same construction. On these standard models, they put Grovers with Spurzle tips on them. Gary Moore modified it to have Spurzle sometime in the 1980s, along with a black jack plate. This is also another distinctive feature of this guitar. The next thing you'll notice is that the neck pickup is backwards on this guitar. That is just an aesthetic thing. This does not change the way this guitar sounds that much, but what really makes this different is that this pickup is out of phase with the bridge pickup. In the middle position, which is the tone this guitar is famous for, it's a very thin, quacky, very punchy sound that isn't like any other Les Paul. It was, at the time, distinctive of this guitar, and of, for a while, Peter Green, and then Gary Moore, and I suppose to a certain extent now Kirk Hammett. The idea behind the burst was that it was meant to mimic violins. And in the violin world, you have a thing called antiquing, where you would put a darker edge around the finish to mimic the wear and tear of actually playing an old violin. This would have started life as a bright cherry sunburst, like all the other Les Pauls of that era. The ironic part is that bursting effect, as it goes away, is how these guitars then age and become relict. And if you'd like to make your friends green with envy, you can check out this guitar on our website at creamcitymusic.com. If you are interested in pure tone, no talking gear demos, you can check that out on our channel right here on YouTube with our series Tone Check. Otherwise, I'm Jacob. I'll continue to be Jacob, and thanks for tuning in.